Welcome to the England pod, where we are all England all the time, and we come to you in especially high spirits because the England under-21s, guided by Lee Carsley, have just lifted the Euros, beating Germany by 3-2 after extra time. A frankly remarkable final, a frankly remarkable tournament, and for the second time in a row, England are the winners of the under-21s Euros. It's the second time we've achieved this feat after Dave Sexton's team did it in the early 80s. I'm Ali Maxwell. I got George Elek with me. We're coming to you from an Airbnb in the West Country where we are on a joint family holiday. George, what a time to be an England football fan. We've got some serious young players and a manager to boot.
Yeah, we do. I mean, incredible to see the way we performed tonight in the final, to go 2-0 up as early as we did and to squander a lead only to then win it is pretty clutch. To beat the old enemy in footballing terms in Germany, to do so was incredible. To go back-to-back in 2 years in a row with basically a completely different squad, albeit one of the only members of it, apart from the coaching staff and the manager himself, in Harvey Elliott, being the player of the tournament and the person who scored the all-important first goal. Incredible. And another reminder that in tournament football, the group stages just basically ignore it, and then the tournament starts when you start playing knockout football, and there's no question in my mind whatsoever that England were the best team in the knockout games. And you could argue, and Lee Carsley said himself in his post-match interview, we weren't great tonight. I think we were definitely the better team throughout the game and created the better chances, even though we were saved a couple of times by the woodwork. Weren't great against Netherlands. Won that game, and deservedly so too. And obviously very, very good against Spain. Incredible.
You've got to be good and you've got to be lucky. That's what Lee Carsley told us on the England Pod's exclusive interview pre-tournament when reflecting on the win 2 years ago. Got a bit lucky in the final against Spain, where a Cole Palmer free kick hit Curtis Jones on the back and went in, where James Trafford made a remarkable double save at the end to secure a victory in what was a tight game. I think it's fair to say we had some luck today. A ricochet in the build-up to the first goal that sent Omari Hutchinson clear, his shot saved, and eventually fell at the feet of Harvey Elliott, who scored some luck in that game against Spain, in that we scored a relatively scrappy set-piece goal, and then the second goal with a poor bit of goalkeeping, pushing it out to the feet of Harvey Elliott. But we're not here to talk about England being lucky. We're here, George, to talk about England being good. We're here to talk about England being a winning team. And also, and this seems significant, based on what I'm seeing on social in particular, when people are watching the England under-21s under Carsley, a fun team to watch. A team that plays in a way that the England senior team have almost never played, and arguably only in a handful of games under Lee Carsley's interim reign, 6, 7, 8 months ago. I don't want to get too into the weeds as to why it looks like they can play without fear and looks like they can play with so much fluidity, positionally, so much confidence on the ball and confidence in each other, so much attacking verve. I do believe in the psychological shackles that major tournament football brings on at senior level, and frankly playing for England seems to bring on. But there is no doubt that they've been a joy to watch at times, just in the way that they approach the game and the way that they attack.
Yeah, and that we won the Euros about 12 minutes ago at time of recording, and almost the last thing I want to do is relate it very quickly to the senior team and what's gone on recently with the senior team and what's going on at the moment and what's going to happen next summer. But Lee Carsley himself, as discussed in his interview with us before the tournament, he is very clear, and he said it again in his post-match on Channel 4, where yes, they want to win, and yes, winning tournaments is important, but he's also very, very aware that preparing players for their senior career and the pathway to that senior team is possibly the most important part of his job, and therefore it is relevant to talk about what this means. And I think we're learning a lesson. Like, this is a guy who was in charge of the senior team for a period of time, who produced in flashes some of the football that I think England fans expected to see. Also oversaw a very humbling defeat against Greece, but it's not like that didn't come under the previous manager ever, or hasn't, and it's already come under the new manager in Tuchel with the Senegal defeat. And what strikes me as being the most impressive thing about what Carsley does, yes, we have the fluidity in positions that he's very good at. CJ Egan-Riley come off the bench in the last 20 minutes tonight, playing centre midfield, having played as, well, he is a centre-back who can play at full-back if needed. And it worked pretty well. Like his ball-winning capabilities in midfield and his energy really helped us. Whether it's the fluid tactical styles and the systems that Carsley's able to create. But for me, the most impressive thing is the way that he's able to get a group of players with not very much time to work with them and turn them into a really cohesive unit, both in terms of the spirit that you see very clearly, I think, amongst the team, but also technically where they play as if they're a side who know their jobs and know what they're doing. And like whether or not he wants the job after his taste of it, I don't know. But working on the assumption that Thomas Tuchel will leave the England job, the seniors job, next summer, regardless of what happens in the World Cup, it just seems so obvious that he's got to be the person that gets an opportunity next. And people might cry about him not singing the national anthem, and people might get upset that he's not the flashy big name or the world class coach. But it's pretty obvious in my mind that there is nobody who is better qualified to carry out the job that is needed to get a group of players for major tournaments, unite them and bind them quickly, play the kind of football that people want to see, and win. And that's what he does.
And in the same way that Southgate benefited from having known a lot of the players that he ended up managing at senior level from his time with the under-21s. And I dare say someone like De La Fuente, for example, who won the Euros with Spain last summer, beating us in the final, who had come from an under-21s role. Carsley, having overseen 2 cycles and 2 Euros victories with a group of young players that now span the ages of current players who are 18 to about 25, 26. A lot of those are now England senior squad players and will be in the future. So on that personal level as well, there has to be a big tick in the box for Carsley that no other manager really has. He's clearly, I'm glad you mentioned the spirit, because I think the tactics get mentioned a lot, and I'm guilty of that. I'm just a huge fan of watching Lee Carsley teams and have been for a long time. I'm a huge fan of the fact that I can very rarely guess the starting 11, particularly at the start of tournaments. And frankly, even when you do know what the starting 11 is, you still don't know exactly how the way the in-possession style or the attacking play will be implemented. We got to know this team over the course of the tournament, and they were just great to watch. And it helped that at the back we had some really good ball players, and particularly Kwanzaa stepping into midfield from centre-back, particularly Livramento, who started the tournament at left-back, moved to right-back, who's just a fabulous player, one of the best players that we have. And then you look in midfield where we had Scott and Anderson, who I would say probably the 2 biggest winners of the tournament, and what a wonderful partnership they developed, and so all action, like something about them that just feels like what a lot of people think of as the archetypal English central midfielder for the modern era, both able to look after the ball in deep spaces, but also very happy carrying it forward, looking to play forward. And Anderson didn't win Player of the Tournament, which was awarded to Harvey Elliott. But for me, Elliot Anderson was England's best player at this tournament, and we won it. And for me, he would have been the Player of the Tournament personally. And then the front 4, who, not to be negative after we won the tournament, they didn't always look amazing. And in the group stages, a lot of the pods that we did were talking about how we could get the best out of the front 4. Flashes of brilliance. And in the first half an hour today, George, let's focus on that. England were electric, not only scoring 2 goals, but also with, 3 or 4 other moments that were either, a whisker away from ending in goals, or with a slightly better finish or cross could easily have been. We were absolutely magnificent to start this game, which is exciting to say about an England team in a major final, because we have a bit of a complex, I think, about England in finals for obvious reasons. We've lost the last 2 we've played in at senior level. One where we scored early and then froze, and one where we were just not the better side and against Spain. But here we flew out the traps, and it was pretty exciting to watch.
Yeah, if you think of, I guess, the 2, the Croatia game and the Italy game, and for the seniors team, and both scoring early, and then the criticism being that we dropped off and were way too defensive after that. There was none of that at all today, where we scored very early again through Harvey Elliott. A really well taken goal after kind of a scrappy bit of play in the box. The ball fell to him, and it was almost like a kind of a penalty that he managed to slot into the corner with the keeper out of position and the defender between him and the goal. And as you'd expect, we came under some pressure after that, but we actually controlled the game pretty well from there. And up until we scored the second goal, and even after the second goal, we always looked at the team most likely to get the second goal. And I would argue that Vipa's header to make it 2-1 before half-time is basically Germany's only really threatening moment in the first half.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I think we could have been further ahead, and
some of the play was just beautiful. Like the second goal, all four of the front players combined for that goal. There were some other moments. McAtee was much more involved in the first half, and yes, he flashed a few across the face of the goal that weren't turned in. But a couple of his touches and just the comfort that he has receiving the ball in like the highest pressure areas of the pitch, high pressure moments. I think McAtee made a bit of a statement tonight with his performance in the first half, which a lot of people were looking at him and saying, look, Elliot's done his bit. Some of the other attacking players have done their bit. You're the captain. You've been, to my eyes, the star of this cycle of the England under-21s, if you look at it as a 2-year period. And tonight, I thought, particularly in the first half, he did step up. I realised that when I talked about luck earlier, I did something that's such a classic football fan thing. I flagged up a couple of things where I thought we were lucky. I didn't even mention that Germany hit the bar twice. Yeah. And both of them in like unbelievably tense moments of the game. So let's reflect for a moment that we did get quite lucky and they did come back and we were 2-0 up and then it was 2-2 and we weren't feeling very, very comfortable at that point.
Yeah, I mean, we got lucky in terms of there were kind of two coin tosses that went our way, but at the same time had the ball flown in to make it 3-2 to Germany in injury time and in normal time, it would have felt to me like they basically had 3 decent opportunities or 3 good chances or 3 attempts on goal that all would have gone in, whereas we missed chances, especially in the first half. I thought we were poor first 25 minutes of the second half for sure. That was the one period of the game where I didn't think we were particularly good, but we didn't still come under massive pressure. And Voltermander, the Germany attacker who ends up as top goal scorer in the tournament, was kept really quiet. He didn't really threaten too much. Someone who's looked electric throughout the tournament. So, yeah.
Turns out he was a fraud, but his little mate Nabel, on the other hand, Jesus Christ, he caused us some issues.
Yeah, and I reckon James Mead will probably feel like he should have done better with the equaliser. It was deflected, but he still got a massive hand on it and wasn't able to really divert it away from goal. I didn't think they were great, frankly, and the amount of times, even early on in the game after we were ahead, that we were able to really threaten in transition and maybe the ball didn't quite fall for us. There was one where McAtee kind of had a kind of cross-come shot, which Stansfield probably should have got on the end of. Stansfield, again, like his industry was great, but in terms of quality, probably lacking behind the rest of the group. But I think on the balance of play, it's the right result. And also, we've been talking for 10, 15 minutes. We haven't spoken about the winner. Like a winner like full of quality, an amazing ball from Tyler Morton and a brilliant, even though it wasn't the cleanest of headers from John Rowe, to kind of stoop and divert the ball into the far corner, and no matter which way you do it, it's still impressive, especially given the situation.
John Rowe. John Rowe. You are the reason that I breathe, John Rowe. You are the reason that I still believe. You are our destiny, John Rowe. I think scoring the winner in the Euros finals meant I was legally obliged.
It's like our version of Crouch doing the robot again at Soccer.
John Rowe and I/us have had like a remarkable 2 years or so where Rowe broke into the Norwich team at the start of the 23-24 season and had an incredible first 2 months of the season, kind of out of nowhere because he'd had some real issues with injury. We came up with the John Rowe song at that point, then interviewed him when he won EFL Young Player of the Month, and he was in my top 5 player interviews I've ever done out of 100. Incredibly charismatic, incredibly funny, incredibly confident in himself, just really like the sort of character that you'd gravitate towards. And then obviously this year out in Marseille, where it's been hit and miss, let's be honest, after kind of forcing his way out of Norwich, much to the dismay of the Norwich fans who loved him, and now scoring the winner in the Euros final. Like, John Rowe has scored the winner in an under-21s Euros final, and I think that's an amazing step in his journey. That, you know, we now have 2 under-21s who play for Marseille, and CJ Egan-Riley now has joined Rowe at Marseille. So we'll be taking a trip to the South Coast, no doubt, to try and go and interview those guys next season. It was an incredible ball from Tyler Morton, and what I thought was worth pointing out is that in an England youth team, whether it's 21s, 19s, 17s, whatever, let's be honest, the way that football media works now in football fandom, there are always going to be players with a lot of hype. And in this England under-21s team, there are a few players with a lot of hype. And I posited to you, George, that Tyler Morton, of all of the outfield players in this England squad, might be the one with the least amount of hype. This is a Liverpool academy graduate who's still contracted to the club, who has had 2 championship loans with Blackburn and with Hull, but who spent last season not doing very much. Didn't go out on loan, didn't play much for Liverpool. One of those that feels like a bit of a lost year. And because of how football works, there's so much recency bias, George, that you forget if a player has a year like that and they're sort of out of sight, out of mind. You forget what they can do. I was surprised when Morton was included in this squad. I was like, okay, is he showing as much as some of the other guys that have missed out? Maybe, maybe not. And his performance against Spain, brilliant when we really needed him. Obviously then suspended for the game against the Netherlands. Would have been interested to see if he'd have started either way. He didn't. Anderson came back in, sparkled, obviously. And today Morton had to come off the bench. And yeah, I think it's fair to say that England's performance suffered a little bit when Scott came off, because he was playing magnificently in the centre of the park, and he's a different type of player to Morton, and one that probably suited this game a bit more because it was so chaotic. But Morton still came up with the technical goods, and that's what he brings to the team.
And I think he'll probably get a very different move, because I assume he's not going to stay at Liverpool again for this season. Well, I hope not, at least. He needs to play football. But he's one of the players, and there are a few of them who probably have done their reputation massive good over the last couple of weeks, and him not even playing that many minutes. He was brilliant today, and the ball he played was very, very good. And as you say, not someone that we probably expected to do that. He's clearly been very highly rated at Liverpool. It feels like he's followed a very common path of kind of hyped up academy grads where fans of clubs think their academy players are amazing, and they go out and loan into the Championship, and they're like, oh my god, they're going to tear it up, and then they play and they're like, you're not as good as we thought you were, so we're going to forget about you pretty quickly. And with Morton, it feels pretty unlikely to me he's going to get a breakthrough at Liverpool, but for sure he had a good loan at Hull. Like, it was a good loan, I expect we'll see him playing Championship football again next season, and why he didn't last season I don't know. But there are so many. I mean, the thing that I love about this, because it would be disingenuous of us to sit here and be like, and this matters as much as the Euros do, or this is as bigger. It's not. Like, it's a massive achievement. It's incredibly gratifying to have followed it as we have, and to have the win. But it's another step in following these players, basically. And you and I are lucky where because of the EFL and our work in the EFL, it means a lot of these guys are people that we have an affinity with anyway. But over the last few weeks, like Elliot Anderson, really fine at Bristol Rovers, like had a great loan that was clearly too good. Was part of a team that, maybe because of the manager I wasn't overly keen on. And you're like, hey, he's great. And then you watch him at Newcastle and you kind of think, yeah, great to see him, his progression there, and he goes to Forest and does well. But this couple of weeks now, you're like, yes, like this is a player that needs to play for England. Alex Scott, one of, he might not be quite at the level of Berriese or Grealish when he came through in terms of the players we've spoken about, but somebody that we loved watching playing for Bristol City in the Championship, who was clearly way better than the level. But like, again, the last couple of weeks have made him a player that I have a massive interest in now. Like, I'm attached to him as a player because of not only the way he performed, but the way he carried himself. Like, even tonight, he got injured with 5 minutes left of the first half, and effectively refused to go off, and then clattered their star man, got a yellow card, and then walked off crying. Like, brilliant. And then ran on
incredible
at the end of the game with his legs like strapped up. Like, he's clearly someone where this kind of football, tournament football, means a lot to him, and playing for England means a lot to him too. Harvey Elliott, another one where I've loved him ever since his loan at Blackburn. It's been really difficult to see him kind of struggle after that bad injury to break into the Liverpool side. I think there was an assumption that his career was on a downward trajectory going to this summer and that he was likely to get a move to see him drop down, and maybe he still will, but he's shown again over the last couple of weeks that in company with some of the best players of his age group in Europe and in the world, he's come out on top, and his goal scoring record in recent times for Liverpool for the under-21s has been incredible. And he's someone with a massive future. Like these are the players now that Kwanzaa again. Like Kwanzaa, a player went to Bristol Rovers who wasn't even very good there. You came to Liverpool and you're sitting there being like, well, obviously it's fine. He's like a very comfortable ball playing centre back playing for one of the best teams in the league, and you see him play for the under-21s. And you're like, no, this is a guy with massive potential, a really high ceiling. There's as you say, a good batch 2 years ago, a good batch now. European champions twice in a row. Like people who think our time of challenging for major tournaments is ending because of the strength elsewhere. Well, no, we are the best seemingly in these two generations.
Watching Kwanzaa step forward into midfield with the ball and drive with it and beat players off the dribble really stirs something quite primal in my loins. And I must admit, I'm still not sure how good a defender Kwanzaa is, and I'm not the best centre-back analyst anyway, so that could just be my own blind spot. But what I am sure of, George, is that Charlie Cresswell is the epitome of the England centre-back and did a lot of stuff tonight, last-ditch stuff, blocks, that won us the game, basically. The sort of stuff that will never be written up in the match report as having been the match-winning stuff, but actually is as crucial as key passes, as good shots, as good goals. Cresswell's been a huge star of the tournament from an England point of view as well. Another player a little out of sight, out of mind, as he now plays for Toulouse. And look, we'll probably do this in more depth at some point, but isn't it interesting that a lot of this squad are playing outside of English football? It feels quite rare. It feels a bit new that would be the case. I think the fact is, George, we are producing so much quality on such a scale that there are not enough squad spots in the Premier League and at the top of the Championship for the talents that we are producing, and European clubs are starting to realise that they have an opportunity to sign players that could feasibly be elite talents from the English game, from the English academy system, but also, frankly, from a cynical business point of view, if they do well for Marseille, for Toulouse, will be sold back into the Premier League as 23, 24-year-olds for a pretty penny. And so I think that's why we're seeing this kind of unusual migration. And when I talk about the player pool being so strong, one of the best ways, I'm going to ask you to get your phone up now because mine's recording, and I WhatsApped you this list earlier. There is a list of English footballers who were eligible for Lee Carsley's under-21s team, who are eligible to play for the under-21s team tonight, who weren't even in the squad that has just won the European Championships. And I'd like you to run us through it.
Yeah, so these are players who, could have played. Obvious reasons some of them are out because they're with the senior team. But Trafford as a keeper, defenders Levi Colwill, Taylor Harwood-Bellis, Jared Branthwaite, Lewis Hall, Miles Lewis-Skelly, Rico Lewis. Midfielders, the Bellingham brothers, both of them. Jude could have played, obviously not, but Job was obviously in the squad. Kobe Mainu, Adam Wharton, who probably would have been in the squad without concussion. Cole Palmer, Morgan Rogers, Noni Madueke and Jamie Gittins in terms of kind of wide players and number 10s. And Liam Delap, who again was part of the squad. And now, we don't want to claim...
They're all such young players is the point.
Yeah, no, for sure.
It's
but there's also another point, which is these are players, at least half of those players, Carsley 6 months ago would have thought it would be available to him. So he's won it. And yet, obviously all nations were missing players, but two of those guys, and Job and Delap, would have played a lot of minutes, and they were both in the squad a month ago. The interesting part to mention on the kind of player pathway thing with players moving abroad is that I definitely agree with you, but the kind of first generation that have done that, ironically with the exception of Jordan Henderson, have kind of really struggled to keep in the national team fold, like for the most part, moving abroad, even to bigger clubs, has been kind of a bit of a death knell in terms of international careers. So, and we know that of the players that played today, there will be quite a lot of players who are now currently celebrating on the pitch in Slovakia who will never get a senior call-up. And, Charlie Cresswell being one, I wouldn't be surprised if he's one of them. John Rowe, I wouldn't be surprised if he's one of them. So, like, you do wonder, are the best players effectively still the ones who stay at home? Maybe.
Yeah, interesting. I just got a bit distracted because shout out Channel 4, by the way, for showing this whole tournament on terrestrial TV. 2 years ago, we won it, and it wasn't able to be viewed by the nation. Channel 4 took it on, and I like to think they've been rewarded for it, because the buzz that we have felt on the England pod, the numbers that we've seen reported in terms of viewing figures have been really pleasing. And it just is the case that particularly when a team at under 21 level goes deep, there's huge interest, as there should be, for English football fans. But as we've been recording, we've gone from watching the lads lifting the trophy to Meet the Fockers. And
I think is it Meet the Fockers?
Is it not Meet the Fockers?
Or is it Meet the Parents?
Or is it Meet the Parents?
I think it might be Fockers because there are kids around. Or is it even the third one?
Meet the other Fockers?
Maybe.
My lack of film knowledge is coming to the fore here. Anyway, somewhat distracting. Some quite funny scenes going on here in the Airbnb in the West Country. It's been a treat and a pleasure to sort of walk you through this tournament on the England pod. Me and Dave and George have had such a fun time on the pods. Charlie and I had an incredible time in Bratislava on Wednesday, singing karaoke with James Beadle's brother and dad until the early hours. And I did notice that Lee Carsley said that they were flying back to England, or to Birmingham rather, at 3:30 in the morning, which means no big session in the Red Lion.
It's because that karaoke bar closed at 2, so it's straight to the airport on the flight half.
Definitely doesn't close at 2, I can tell you that. No night in the Dubliner, no night in the Red Lion, no Saturday night in Bratislava, which is a shame because these players deserve it. They are champions of the Euros, and that is very cool to say. For the second time in 2 consecutive tournaments, England have won, and hopefully, as we progress on the England pod, we will cover more youth tournament wins. But the idea is that at some point we will be covering and talking to you about England's senior team winning a major tournament at men's level. Next month, we have the Lionesses at the Euros, looking to go back to back. There are plenty of parallels with this Lee Carsley Unders team, and we will have the England pod Lionesses edition throughout the tournament. So please make sure you are subscribed. And if we could ask a small favour, if you've enjoyed the England pod at any point in this episode or before, why not tell some mates about it? Our theory is that anyone who is a football fan and of English nationality could and should be interested in English football national teams, and therefore in this podcast. And hopefully we're doing our best to bring you some decent coverage of it.
Just been informed that you may have featured in the Channel 4 montage at the end of the tournament.
No.
Yep.
No.
Yep.
No.
Yep.
Oh my God.
And what's weird about it is the picture I've been sent, Charlie isn't there. So it might be new footage of you on a stairwell.
Fresh footage. The conspiracy theorists will be going absolutely mad with that. Right, I need to call my crisis comms PR man. Thank you so much for listening throughout the tournament. From Dave, from Charlie, from George and myself, from the whole of the England pod, we're buzzing. Lee Carsley's Unders have done it. We've won the Euros back to back. Thanks for listening, and go well.